Hello, and welcome to the Athlete Address and Residency Justification requirements for NCAA basketball certification. The address utilized for a prospective student-athlete to participate with a team at NCAA certified events must comply with the NCAA residency requirements. To assist the coach, this video will outline many of the essential components necessary for understanding and complying with these requirements. Each year during the registration and renewal process, all athletes are asked to enter all applicable addresses where the athlete resides prior to submitting in the basketball certification system. For each address entered, the athlete must also select the address type closest to their current circumstances. The available options for athlete address type are with my parent, where the athlete lives with a parent or adoptive parent; at a boarding school, the athlete lives on campus of the school he or she attends; with a host family, the athlete lives with a non-parent family, friend, foster family, foreign exchange program host family, etc. With a legal guardian, the athlete lives with a court-appointed legal guardian or state agency placement, or other, which is for rare circumstances only. We advise the athlete to try to pick one of the other options. If none of them come close to the athlete's current circumstances, then they can choose this option. Address restrictions are determined by comparing the official address of the team as entered by the coach in the basketball certification system to the address of the athlete. In the case of U.S. addresses, only athletes that are in the same state, same metro area, or in an adjoining state to the team address will appear in a search to add the athlete to the bench. Alaska and Hawaii are not geographically adjoined by any other state, and no states have been designated as adjoining states for Alaska and Hawaii. Athletes from those states are required to play on a team from that state. Boys teams are limited to 3 athletes from an adjoining state. An unlimited amount of adjoining state athletes can be added at the bench level, but only 3 can be added to an event-specific roster. Out-of-state athletes who meet the requirements to utilize the metro area exception will not be flagged on the bench. In the case of non-U.S. addresses, all athletes on a team participating in NCAA certified events must have residency in the same country as the team's address. This requirement is not determined by citizenship, but rather where the athlete lives. As you begin to build your bench in the BBCS, you may encounter trouble either searching for or adding some athletes. If this occurs, consider the following possible issues. First, the athlete may have selected the wrong state by mistake. If this is true, the athlete's parent or guardian will need to contact ECAG for assistance updating their address. Second, the address the athlete entered is not in the same state or adjoining state as the team address. Third, the athlete has moved to a different state. If the athlete no longer resides in either the same or an adjoining state to the team, you will not be able to add him or her to your bench. Fourth, the athlete's BBCS account is not complete. Athletes must complete all requirements on both the basic and school information tabs. Lastly, the coach may not be searching for the athlete in the correct state. Make sure when searching for an adjoining state athlete that you change the drop-down selection to the correct state before searching. Once athletes have been added to the bench, the BBCS will identify those athletes who may be in violation of athlete address requirements with a yellow bar below the athlete's entry on the coach's bench. This may be because the athlete has more than one address entered on his or her profile, has entered one of the address types that require documentation and manual inspection of that documentation, has recently had a change of address, or has the same address and/or phone number as another individual who does not appear to be related to this athlete. The coach will be required to submit a justification statement and supporting documentation for all flagged athletes via the red Requires Justification button on the bench. In some cases, the documentation uploaded by the athlete may be enough and the coach will not need to submit additional documentation. The BBCS, however, will still require that a document gets uploaded. If this is the case, the coach can type up a response that says, "See documents on athlete's profile," and upload that text document. If the information on the athlete's profile is insufficient, for example, the athlete just uploaded a selfie from their phone or a photo of their team, or if the justification refers to the athlete having the same address and/or phone number as another person on the bench, then the coach will need to include documentation that validates the address as compliant with a justification statement and supporting documentation when the justification is submitted. The coach will need to obtain documentation from the athlete's family that validates that the athlete is compliant with the minimum standard of residency requirements. The coach must then submit that documentation via the red Requires Justification button on the coach's bench. Documentation is required before the athlete can be added to an event roster. Once Requires Justification appears on the coach's bench, the coach must submit something via the button on his or her bench. Do not have the athlete or athlete's parents call or contact ECAG about the justification. It is the coach's responsibility. If an input error was made by the athlete during registration that in turn triggered a justification, the coach must explain and provide proof of correct information via the red Requires Justification button on his or her bench before a change can be made. If the lived at address date on the athlete's profile shows the athlete has not lived at the address for a minimum of 3 months prior to the start of events, the coach will need to upload or supplement any documentation submitted by the athlete with documentation showing the athlete has resided in the same state with the parent for a minimum of 3 months prior to participating in events. This could be a utility bill from at least 3 months prior from the previous residence in the same state, a previous lease or rental agreement, or the athlete's transcript. If the athlete selected lives at a boarding school or lives with a host family in the same locale as the school they are attending, you must provide a full year school transcript or report card. For spring events, this must also include evidence of attendance on the first day of school. Again, this can be documented on the transcript or report card or via an official signed letter from the school. If the athlete is an international student, you must also upload a copy of their I-20 and visa. If the athlete selected that he or she lives with a legal guardian, the coach should upload a copy of the signed court order or state agency placement order granting custody of the athlete to a legal guardian. Temporary guardianship signed by a notary public or power of attorney is not sufficient. If this is not available, a school transcript or report card showing the athlete has attended school in the state for 1 full academic year would also be acceptable. For spring events, this must also include evidence of attendance on the first day of school. This can be documented on the transcript or report card or via an official signed letter from the school. If the athlete is an international student, you must also upload a copy of their I-20 and visa. The justification on the coach's bench could also refer to users having the same address and/or phone number, meaning the athlete shares an address or phone number with someone else on the bench who does not have the same last name. This could be a parent or sibling with a different last name, step-parent, another student, etc. The coach will need to provide documentation showing the familial relationship. For example, a birth certificate for a parent-child relationship, or a birth certificate and either a marriage certificate, a tax return, or insurance statement that shows the athlete as dependent for a step-parent, sibling, or step-sibling relationship. Additionally, the coach could instead provide a copy of the athlete's school transcript or report card showing 1 full academic year of attendance. All justifications must be submitted prior to the athlete's participation in an NCAA certified event. As long as there is a red requires justification button on the coach's bench, the athlete cannot be added to a roster for an event. Once the coach has submitted the justification, the status will change to pending and the coach will be able to add the athlete to the roster. If additional information is needed for ECAG to render a decision, the request will be made through the bench justification process. The button will indicate pending justification, more info needed, and the coach will be notified via email that additional information has been requested. This request will also include a due date, so please respond to these requests in a timely manner. Also, please keep in mind that justifications are processed in the order in which they are received. As we approach certified event weekends, it is typical for an extreme volume of justifications to be submitted, resulting in a possible processing delay. If your justification is still pending at the time of your event, remember to take the required documentation with you to check in, as the event operator has the authority to review the justification and documentation. If the event operator feels the documents are sufficient, they can allow the athletes to participate at their discretion. Creating your bench early and responding to any red requires justification buttons or requests for additional information as quickly as possible will help you avoid a processing delay. Justification decisions will be posted in the BBCS on the coach's bench to communicate whether the athlete may utilize that address to participate with the team. These decisions are visible to the bench coach and all event operators running an event in which the team has a roster to ensure compliance or validate the athlete's eligibility with the team. After ECAG issues a decision on a justification, the coach may ask the staff to reconsider its decision only if the coach submits new relevant information. Requests with new relevant information are still subject to the timeline requirements of the initial request. Again, high volume and late submission may result in ECAG not rendering a decision prior to the start of events. The athlete address requirements and documentation of proof flowchart is available to help coaches determine if an athlete's address type meets the requirements and what documentation is required to be collected to prove they can use the address to play for your team. When an athlete's circumstances prevent him or her from meeting the NCAA address requirements to participate with a team, the athlete's parent or coach may request an exception by submitting the athlete address residency exception request form. Please keep in mind exceptions to the address requirements are extremely rare. You can find both documents along with the BBCS Quick Start Guides posted in the Basketball Certification Resources section of www.ncaa.org/basketball certification. Finally, coaches are responsible for ensuring that the team he or she is coaching is compliant with NCAA team composition and residency requirements. The coach should obtain and maintain documentation from the athlete's family that validates that the athlete is compliant with the minimum standard of residency requirements prior to allowing the athlete to participate with the team in an NCAA certified event. Teams who fail to ensure compliance put the certification of the events where it participates at risk, and the team and/or organization and all coaches associated with the team are subject to penalties. When in doubt, err on the side of caution and provide more information, not less. If you have questions, visit the Basketball Certification page on ncaa.org for step-by-step guides, including the justification process step-by-step, forms, event information, and other helpful resources. The coach can also call or contact ECAG using the contact information available on the website. Thank you for completing the NCAA Athlete Address and Residency Justification video.